Imagine a day so extraordinary that it defies belief. A day when Jesus confronted an army of demons, thousands strong, in a clash that shook the very ground beneath. But what if I told you the real shock wasn't the battle itself, but something far more unexpected waiting at its end? What could make an entire town turn away from the one who defeated darkness itself? That question will grip you as we unravel this story, and trust me, the answer will leave you stunned. Welcome to a journey into one of the Bible's most electrifying moments, set on the rugged shores of Gadara. This isn't just a tale of power and miracles. It's a mirror reflecting the choices we all face when light breaks into our shadows. Why did a legion of demons tremble before a single man? How did one life, shattered by evil, become a beacon of hope? And what does this mean for us today? We're about to dive deep into a narrative packed with mystery, triumph, and truths that hit home. You won't want to miss a single moment of what's coming, because this story might just change how you see everything. Before we step onto that shore, here's a quick ask. If you're ready to be amazed by this biblical epic, smash that like button to share the excitement. It helps us reach more hearts with these stories. And if you want to keep exploring the Bible's hidden gems with us, subscribe to our channel and join the thousands who never miss an episode. Now let's begin, where a storm sets the stage for a battle unlike any other. The Sea of Galilee, usually a cradle of calm under the stars, had turned into a cauldron of chaos. Waves surged like mountains, crashing against the small wooden boat that bore Jesus and his disciples through the night. The wind screamed, a relentless force tearing at the tattered sail, while icy water flooded the deck, threatening to drag them into the depths. These disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, John, were no strangers to the sea's moods. As seasoned fishermen, they had faced squalls before, but this storm was different. It was as if the elements themselves had conspired to devour them. Their hands gripped the oars, their voices hoarse with panic. "Teacher, don't you care that we are about to perish?" they shouted, their words swallowed by the gale's roar. Matthew 8:25. In the midst of this uproar, Jesus rested in the stern, his head on a cushion, sleeping as if the world were at peace. How could anyone find such calm amid a tempest? His serenity was not mere exhaustion, it was a silent proclamation of authority, a hint of the divine power that pulsed within him. The disciples' fear clashed with his tranquility, a contrast that would soon define the events to come. Stirred by their cries, Jesus rose, his eyes steady, his voice cutting through the storm like a blade. "Peace, be still," he commanded. Mark 4:39. In an instant, the wind fell silent, the waves flattened, and a profound hush enveloped the sea. It was as if time itself had paused to bow before him. The disciples stood breathless, their hearts pounding, their minds grappling with what they had witnessed. "What kind of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" they whispered among themselves. Mark 4:41. This was no ordinary teacher, no mere prophet. The sea, a force no human could tame, had submitted to his word. But this miracle was only the opening act. As the boat glided toward the shore, a darker challenge loomed, one not of wind or water, but of spirits that defied the natural order. Have you ever faced a storm in your life that seemed unstoppable? What if the one who calmed the sea could also silence the tempest within your soul? Let's follow Jesus to the shore and discover the answer. As the first rays of dawn painted the horizon, the boat scraped against the rocky shore of Gadara, or Gerasa, as some records name it, a region nestled in the Decapolis, a cluster of 10 cities far removed from the heart of Israel. This was not the land of covenant promises, of temple sacrifices, or Sabbath rest. Here the air was thick with the pulse of a different world, the chatter of Greek merchants, the clink of Roman coins, and the faint echo of rituals to gods unknown to the Torah. The hills were alive with the grunts of vast herds of pigs, their numbers stretching across the landscape like a living carpet. To a Jew, these creatures were an abomination, forbidden by the law of Moses as unclean. Leviticus 11:7, Deuteronomy 14:8. In Israel, such a sight would be scandalous. In Gadara, it was the backbone of commerce. The Decapolis was a cultural crossroads, where Hellenistic ideals mingled with local traditions under the watchful eye of Roman rule. Temples to Zeus and Artemis dotted the skyline, their incense drifting through markets where traders haggled over goods from distant lands. For the disciples, stepping onto this soil must have felt like entering a foreign realm. Peter, with his fisherman's simplicity, might have glanced uneasily at the pigs grazing openly, their presence a stark reminder of how far they were from home. John, the reflective one, might have sensed a deeper significance. Why had Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, brought them to a place so alien to their faith? Yet Jesus moved with purpose, his steps deliberate, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His presence in this Gentile land was no whim. It was a divine signal, a whisper of the gospel's future reach. As Paul would later write, there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. The same Lord is Lord of all. Romans 10-12. But beneath the surface of this bustling region lay a shadow, a terror that haunted the locals' whispers. Tales of men possessed, living among the dead, had turned the hills into a place of dread. What awaited Jesus and his disciples in this land of strangers? And why had the one who calmed the sea chosen this shore as his next battlefield? The moment Jesus' feet touched the shore, a disturbance broke the morning's quiet. From the direction of the tombs, those desolate caves carved into the cliffs, came a figure that chilled the blood. A man, or what remained of one, staggered forward, his body gaunt and scarred, his eyes blazing with an unnatural fire. His hair was matted with dirt, his limbs bound by the remnants of shattered chains, as if he had torn through iron with brute force. His voice was a guttural howl, a sound that seemed to rise from the depths of torment. Mark's gospel paints a harrowing picture. He lived among the tombs, crying out day and night, gashing himself with stones. Mark 5:5. Matthew adds that there may have been two such men, their presence so fearsome that travelers avoided the area entirely. Matthew 8:28. To the people of Gadara, this man was a walking nightmare. They had tried everything, chains, guards, exile, but nothing could restrain him. His strength was beyond human, his anguish beyond comprehension. Mothers hushed their children with warnings of the demon man who haunted the tombs, a figure who embodied the region's darkest fears. The disciples, standing in Jesus' shadow, must have felt their stomachs churn. They had seen miracles, the lame walking, the blind seeing, but this was no mere illness. This was a man enslaved by a force that mocked human power, a force that thrived in the realm of the dead. Who could face such a creature without turning away? Who could look into those haunted eyes and not recoil? Yet Jesus advanced, his steps unwavering, his face a mask of compassion and resolve. The disciples trailed behind, their hearts racing, their minds wrestling with a single question. What power could possibly break the chains of such darkness? The answer was standing before the man, ready to confront not just a tormented soul, but the army of evil within him. As Jesus drew near, the man fell to his knees, but the voice that spoke was not his own. It was a cacophony, a chorus of malice that rasped from his throat. "What have you to do with us, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? We beg you, do not torment us before the time." Matthew 8:29, Mark 5:7. The disciples froze, their breath catching. How did this entity know Jesus' name? More staggering, it addressed him with a title reserved for divinity, Son of the Most High. The demon's words echoed a truth the disciples were only beginning to grasp. As James later wrote, "Even the demons believe and shudder." James 2:19. But this was no single spirit. When Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" the answer struck like thunder. "Legion, for we are many." Mark 5:9. A legion. To the Roman mind, a legion was an army of thousands, a disciplined force capable of crushing entire cities. This was no lone demon, no minor spirit. This was a horde, a battalion of darkness that had seized this man's body, mind, and soul, turning him into a vessel of chaos. Imagine the weight of that revelation. Thousands of malevolent entities, united in their hatred, speaking through one broken voice. Yet before Jesus, they did not defy or attack. They cowered. They pleaded, their arrogance replaced by dread, begging not to be cast into the abyss, the place of eternal confinement they knew awaited them. Luke 8:31, Jude 1:6. Why would such a force capable of shattering chains and terrorizing a region tremble before a man with no army, no weapons? The answer lay in what they saw. Not just a man, but the Son of God, the one whose coming marked the beginning of their end. Have you ever considered what it means to stand before a power so great that even the darkest forces quake? The disciples were about to witness that power in action. The Gospels offer a vivid window into this moment. Mark 5:1-9 describes the man's torment and the demon's desperate plea, painting a picture of a soul trapped in unimaginable suffering. Matthew 8:28-29 emphasizes the demon's recognition of Jesus as the Son of God, fearing he had come to judge them before the appointed time. Luke 8:26-31 adds that they begged not to be sent into the abyss, a place of divine restraint for fallen angels, as hinted in Jude 1:6, and later confirmed in Revelation 21:3. These accounts converge on a single, unshakable truth. The demons knew Jesus' identity with chilling clarity, while the disciples still questioned, "Who is this man?" Mark 4:41. The forces of darkness had no such doubts. They saw the King of Heaven, the one whose authority was absolute. This encounter resonates with broader biblical themes. Isaiah 61:1 prophesies a Messiah who will proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. In Gadara, that promise was coming to life. The demon's fear also echoes Psalm 24:7-8. Lift up your heads, O gates. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Jesus was not just a healer or teacher. He was the divine warrior, stepping onto a Gentile shore to wage war against the powers of darkness. But this battle would unfold in a way no one could predict, revealing not only his power, but the destiny of those he came to save. The scene was set for a confrontation unlike any other. A legion of demons, an army of darkness that had held a man captive in a region in fear, now knelt before Jesus, their voices trembling with desperation. The disciples watched, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding. Would Jesus unleash his power and banish this horde to the abyss? Would he call down fire from heaven, as Elijah once did? 2 Kings 1:10. Or was there a deeper plan, a purpose that would shake the hills of Gadara and challenge the hearts of all who witnessed it? One thing was certain: when Jesus spoke, nothing could resist him. The sea had obeyed, the demons were pleading. But what would happen when he answered their request? Would their fate be sealed, or would their actions unleash a spectacle no one could have foreseen? The answer would not only reveal the unmatched authority of Jesus, but expose the choices of those who stood in his presence. Stay with us, because the next moment will leave you speechless. A turn of events that will echo through the ages. The air on the Gadara shore was thick with tension, as if the very hills held their breath. The man possessed by a legion of demons knelt before Jesus, his body trembling, but it was not his voice that spoke. A chorus of unnatural tones, sharp and pleading, erupted from his lips. "We beg you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, do not cast us into the abyss." Luke 8:31. The disciples standing at a distance felt their skin prickle. This was no ordinary cry for mercy. These were the words of 1,000 unseen enemies, a horde that had tormented a man and terrorized a region, now reduced to begging before a single figure, clad in simple robes. The demon's plea was startling not just for its desperation, but for its clarity. They knew Jesus' identity, Son of the Most High, a title that pierced the veil between heaven and earth. They feared the abyss, a place of divine confinement where their malice would be bound forever. Revelation 23. But their request took a stranger turn. "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs grazing nearby." Matthew 8:31. Pigs? Why would a legion of spirits, capable of shattering chains, seek refuge in animals despised by the Jews? Was this a cunning ploy or a sign of their utter defeat? The disciples exchanged glances, their minds racing. Something monumental was unfolding, a clash not of flesh, but of realms invisible. Have you ever considered what it means for darkness to fear light so deeply that it begs for any escape? The demon's words revealed a truth. Before Jesus, no power could stand defiant. But what would he do with their plea? Would he grant their request, or was this the moment their reign of terror would end? Jesus stood unwavering, his eyes fixed on the man whose soul was a battlefield. The demon's plea hung in the air, a fragile thread of desperation. Then with a voice calm, yet absolute, he spoke. "Go," Matthew 8:32. "Go." The disciples must have blinked in disbelief. Jesus, the one who had silenced a storm with a word, who held authority over heaven and earth, allowed these malevolent spirits to enter a herd of pigs? This was no act of weakness, no compromise with evil. It was a deliberate choice, a divine strategy that would unveil the true nature of the forces at play. Why did Jesus permit this? The answer lies not in negotiation, but in revelation. By allowing the demons to flee into the pigs, Jesus was not granting them freedom. He was exposing their destructiveness for all to see. Evil, when stripped of its human host, cannot create, it can only destroy. The pigs, numbering in the thousands, were a fitting canvas for this truth. In Jewish eyes, they were already symbols of impurity, Deuteronomy 14:8. In God's plan, they would become a mirror reflecting the chaos of the demonic realm. Jesus' decision was not passive. It was a calculated act to demonstrate that no force, not even a legion, could act without his consent. This moment echoes a broader biblical principle. God's sovereignty reigns over all powers. As Paul later wrote, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to Christ," Matthew 28:18. The demons could not flee, fight, or hide unless Jesus allowed it. But what would happen when they entered the pigs? Would their power wane, or would their malice unleash a spectacle that would shake the region? The disciples braced themselves, sensing that the battle was far from over. No sooner had Jesus spoken than a tremor rippled through the hillside. The herd of pigs, thousands strong, their bristled backs covering the slopes like a dark tide, erupted into chaos. Eyes wild, hooves pounding, they surged forward as if driven by an unseen whip. The ground shook under their weight, a thunderous roar of squeals and stomping that drowned out all else. Then in a moment that seared itself into the witnesses' minds, the entire herd charged over a cliff, plummeting into the churning waters below, Mark 5:13. The sea swallowed them, their bodies vanishing beneath the waves, leaving only silence in their wake. The scale of the event was staggering. Mark notes there were about 2,000 pigs, a number that paints a picture of economic catastrophe for the region's herders. The disciples, rooted to the spot, could only stare as the ripples spread across the water. The locals who tended the herd, caught off guard, stood frozen, their faces pale with shock. This was no natural stampede. It was the handiwork of the legion, unleashed in a frenzy of destruction. The pigs, innocent creatures, became unwitting casualties in a display of evil's true intent. As John later wrote, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy," John 10:10. Here that truth was laid bare in a spectacle of loss. What did this mean for the man who had been possessed? And what would the people of Gadara make of such a cataclysm? The answers were moments away, but one thing was clear. The power of Jesus had turned the demon's plea into their undoing. Have you ever seen chaos unravel when confronted by unshakable authority? The destruction of the pigs was more than a dramatic scene. It was a profound symbol, rich with meaning for those with eyes to see. In the Jewish world, pigs were not merely animals. They were emblems of defilement, banned from consumption and contact by God's law, Leviticus 11:7. To the people of Israel, a pig represented everything contrary to holiness, a creature that bore the mark of uncleanness in its very nature. In Gadara, a Gentile land, these pigs were a livelihood, a staple of trade and sustenance. Yet in God's economy, they became a stage for a divine lesson. When the demons entered the pigs, they did not find refuge. They found ruin. Their presence turned the herd into a mirror of their own nature, chaotic, destructive, and doomed. The pig's headlong rush into the sea was a vivid portrait of evil's trajectory. Left unchecked, darkness devours whatever it touches, dragging its host to destruction. This imagery resonates with biblical warnings about sin's consequences. As Paul wrote, "The wages of sin is death," Romans 6:23. The pig's fate was a visible echo of that truth, a warning to all who witnessed it that evil, no matter how powerful, is ultimately self-defeating. But there was another layer to this symbol. By allowing the demons to enter creatures deemed unclean, Jesus was signaling a shift. The gospel he preached was not bound by cultural taboos. It would reach even those considered unclean by tradition, as Peter would later learn in a vision of unclean animals declared clean. Acts 10:15. Could this act be a foretaste of grace for all nations? The disciples, steeped in Jewish law, might not have grasped it yet, but the seeds of a universal mission were being sown. At the heart of this moment stood a truth that reverberated beyond the cliffs of Gadara. Jesus held absolute authority over all powers, seen and unseen. The demons, for all their numbers and malice, could not act without his permission. Their plea to enter the pigs was not a bargain struck on equal terms. It was a submission to his will. When he said go, it was not a concession, but a command, a reminder that even the forces of darkness operate under divine restraint. As Paul declared, Christ disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them. Colossians 2:15. This authority was no abstract theology. It was palpable, undeniable. The demons' fear of the abyss pointed to a future judgment they could not escape, a day when every knee will bow before Christ, Philippians 2:10. Revelation 20:10 speaks of that final reckoning, when Satan and his forces will face eternal defeat. In Gadara, that future broke into the present, a preview of the victory secured by Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. The disciples witnessing this were glimpsing the heart of their master's mission, to bind the strong man and plunder his house, Mark 3:27. What does it mean to stand before a king whose word commands both angels and demons? For the disciples, it was a lesson in awe. For us, it's an invitation to trust the one who holds all things in his hands. But the story wasn't over. The pigs were gone, the demons exposed. But what would the people do when faced with such power? The sea lay still, its surface unbroken, save for the fading ripples where thousands of pigs had vanished. The hillside, moments ago alive with the chaos of the herd, was now eerily silent. The disciples stood beside Jesus, their eyes darting between the freed man and the stunned herders who had witnessed the catastrophe. The legion of demons had been cast out, their destructive nature laid bare for all to see. But the battle of light and darkness was not yet complete. The people of Gadara were coming, drawn by the news of the disaster. What would they say when they saw the man restored, the herd lost, and Jesus standing at the center of it all? Would they fall to their knees, awestruck by the power that had shattered a legion's hold? Would they seek the one who had brought freedom to a captive soul? Or would their hearts turn elsewhere, to fears and losses too great to ignore? The answer would reveal more than the fate of the demons. It would expose the choices that define humanity. Stay with us, because what happened next was not just unexpected. It was a moment that would challenge every heart, then and now. The cliffs of Gadara stood silent, their rugged faces bearing witness to a moment that had shaken the region to its core. The sea below, now calm under the midday sun, hid the wreckage of thousands of pigs, lost in a frenzied plunge that no one could explain. Word of the disaster raced through the town like a spark in dry grass, pulling men and women from their homes, their shops, their fields. Farmers with weathered hands, merchants clutching their ledgers, mothers shielding their children. They all converged on the shore, their voices a murmur of fear and curiosity. What they found stopped them cold. Jesus, serene amidst the chaos. The man once possessed, now quiet at his side. And the herders, their eyes wide, stammering tales of a herd turned mad. Yet instead of awe, their response was staggering. Please leave our land, Matthew 8:34. Why would a people, standing before such power, beg its source to depart? The answer lay not in their hearts but in their hands. Hands that had tended those pigs, counted their worth, built lives around their trade. Mark's gospel hints at the scale. About 2,000 pigs, a fortune in a region where livestock meant survival. Mark 5:13. Each squeal that had faded into the sea was a coin lost, a meal unsold, a debt unpaid. To the townspeople, Jesus was not a savior, but a disruptor, a force whose presence threatened the fragile balance of their world. Their plea was not anger. It was fear, raw and human, born of a life tethered to what they could touch and measure. What if he stayed? What else might vanish under his gaze? This choice was no anomaly. It echoes through Scripture's pages. When God's glory descended on Sinai, the Israelites trembled, begging Moses to speak for them lest they die, Exodus 20:19. Jesus himself warned, "The light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light," John 3:19. In Gadara, that truth unfolded in living color. Have you ever felt the pull to cling to what's familiar, even when freedom stands before you? The townspeople did, and their decision would mark them forever. In the shadow of the crowd's unease stood a miracle they could not ignore, though many tried. The man who had once been a terror, his body a map of scars, his screams a nightly curse, was no longer a captive of darkness. Where chains had failed to bind him, where fear had driven him to the tombs, now sat a soul reborn. His eyes, once wild with torment, were clear, reflecting a peace that seemed to radiate from within. His hands, once bloodied by stones, rested calmly, wrapped in a cloak someone had draped over him. He was clothed, composed, in his right mind. Luke 8:35, a phrase that carried weight beyond sanity. It spoke of a heart restored, a life reclaimed from the abyss. The disciples who had recoiled at his approach now gazed in wonder. This was not the creature who had broken iron with his hands. This was a brother, a man whose dignity Jesus had returned. His transformation stirred something deep in those who saw it. He turned to Jesus, his voice steady yet thick with emotion. "Let me come with you," Mark 5:18. It was the plea of a heart unbound, a soul that had tasted slavery and now craved the presence of its liberator. But Jesus had a different call. "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." Luke 8:39. With those words, the man became more than a survivor. He became a messenger, sent to carry light where shadows lingered. His story mirrors the promise of Psalm 40, verse 2-3. "He drew me up from the pit of destruction and put a new song in my mouth." For this man, that song was his testimony, a melody of grace that would echo through the ages. What does it mean to be so changed that your life becomes a beacon for others? His journey invites us to find out. The drama of Gadara was not confined to its rocky shores. It was a spark that would ignite a fire far beyond. Jesus' decision to step into this Gentile land, a place of foreign gods and forbidden practices, was no mere detour. It was a bold declaration that his kingdom knew no bounds. The townspeople's rejection could not dim the light he had kindled. The man he freed, once a prisoner of a legion, became a living bridge, carrying the news of Jesus' power to the Decapolis, a region of 10 cities steeped in Hellenistic culture. Mark tells us he went, proclaiming how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled, Mark 5:20. One voice born from one miracle reached thousands. This act fulfilled ancient words spoken through Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, to proclaim liberty to the captives," Isaiah 61:1. That liberty was not for Israel alone, but for all who dwelt in darkness, Jew or Gentile. Jesus' presence in Gadara was a prelude to his final charge. "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations," Matthew 28:19. Paul would later amplify this vision, proclaiming that Christ has broken down the dividing wall of hostility between peoples, Ephesians 2:14. The man's testimony was a cornerstone, laid in a land where pagan altars once stood unchallenged. The disciples watching him depart might have sensed the stirrings of a mission they could not yet fully grasp, a gospel that would one day topple empires. What does it mean for a single act of grace to ripple across borders? In Gadara, it meant a new dawn, where one man's freedom became a promise for all. Could such a moment in an obscure town truly change the world? The answer lies in the countless lives touched by that one voice. The story of Gadara is not a relic of history. It is a mirror held up to our souls, reflecting choices we face every day. The townspeople's decision to prioritize their pigs over a miracle was not a sin of malice, but a surrender to fear. Those pigs were more than animals. They were stability, identity, the rhythm of a life they understood. Jesus' power, though undeniable, was too vast, too unpredictable. They chose the comfort of the known over the mystery of the divine, a choice that resonates across time. Jesus himself taught, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" Mark 8:36. In Gadara, that question hung heavy, unanswered by those who turned away. We are not so different. How often do we cling to our own herds, our careers, our routines, our possessions, when God calls us to something greater? The townspeople's fear was human, their loss real, yet it blinded them to the treasure standing before them. In contrast, the freedman saw clearly. His gratitude was not a fleeting emotion, but a fire that drove him to share his story. As Paul wrote, "If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come." 2 Corinthians 5:17. That newness is offered to us all, but it comes with a challenge: to let go of what binds us, to step into light that demands trust. This lesson is not condemnation, but invitation. Jesus did not force his presence on Gadara, just as he does not force it on us. He waits, offering freedom to those willing to receive it. What holds you back from embracing that call? The choice is yours, and it shapes eternity. As the crowd thinned, their footsteps fading into the dust, one truth shone brighter than their rejection. The story was far from over. The man Jesus had freed did not vanish into silence. Sent back to his people, he became a flame in the darkness, his words carrying the weight of a miracle. Mark's gospel captures the impact. He went through the Decapolis, sharing how much Jesus had done for him, and all people marveled, Mark 5:20. 10 cities steeped in pagan ways heard the name of Jesus through a man who had once been their terror. A single life redeemed from ruin became a catalyst that shifted a region's heart. This was the surprise no one saw coming. The townspeople's refusal could have been the end, a door slammed shut on grace. Yet God's purpose wove through their rejection, turning one man's freedom into a movement. This twist recalls the promise of Isaiah 55:11. "My word shall accomplish what I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it." In Gadara, that word lived in a testimony that outlasted fear, a spark that lit fires no herd could buy. Could one voice truly change a culture? In this moment, it did, a reminder that no refusal can silence God's plan. What does it mean for one life to ripple through history? The man's story challenges us to see our own potential as bearers of light, no matter how broken our past. The sun dipped low, painting the Gadara hills with hues of gold and shadow. The townspeople retreated to their homes, their minds clouded by loss, their choice a weight they could not yet name. The man, now free, walked a different path, his heart alight with a mission to proclaim what Jesus had done. The disciples stood beside their master, their thoughts a whirlwind of awe and questions. They had seen chains broken, a legion humbled, and a people turn away. Yet through it all, Jesus remained, steady, compassionate, the embodiment of a kingdom that no rejection could dim. What did it mean to follow such a king? To witness a power that transformed one life while others looked away? The answers were not just for Gadara's shores, but for every soul that hears this tale. Would we echo the townspeople, guarding our treasures at the cost of grace? Or would we, like the freed man, let our lives sing of the one who sets captives free? As we draw this story to a close, one question burns bright. When light shines into your darkness, what will you choose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this story speaks to you. Your reflections inspire us all. Before you go, let's continue this journey together. If this story resonates with you, hit like to let us know. Share this video with people who need to hear about a power greater than any darkness. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified every time we release a new recap of unforgettable moments from the Bible. Your support helps us bring these stories to life for thousands more.